Sorry, I'll moderate that in the future. Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. I want to start by thanking our witnesses for being here today and for the testimony that you're going to provide and the insight you're going to give to our committee. I appreciate that. I want to kind of set the stage for why we're here today and why the committee is interested in this topic. Nothing in the VA functions without technology. I think we all understand that, and it's a huge part of what makes the VA work, and in certain instances make the VA not work as well as it could. It's also the really predominant focus, of course, of the jurisdiction of this subcommittee as well. It's a simple statement, but it gets to the heart of why OIT's mission is so important. The VA needs reliable, modern technology in order to provide the high-quality benefits and services that our veterans deserve and have earned through their service. Since its creation in 2016, OIT has been constantly fighting a two-front battle. The first of which is to maintain and secure the existing technology systems that we have to shore those up from vulnerability and make sure that they function properly and in the way that we've expected. The second is to replace or modernize what is broken and outdated. It reminds me a little bit of our physical infrastructure throughout the country, where you have roads and bridges that are being maintained over time, but also those that reach the point of needing replacement, and having to do both at once is a difficult and challenging process. So you have my respect for the difficulty and challenges that presents. While it's easy to ask for more money, history has shown that funding alone does not necessarily result in the outcomes that we would like, and many of OIT's persistent issues raises important questions in this way. Is OIT getting the best possible result for their technology investments? Is OIT prioritizing cost effectiveness and veteran outcomes in their decision making? Does OIT operate a certain way because it is the best way, or is it because it's the only way we've ever done it? Sometimes we get into a decision matrix where we've done things a certain way over time, and that becomes the bit of a de facto experience. I run into that here in Congress, and we're elected to do a certain job, and oftentimes we're faced with, well, we've always done it this way, so that's the way we're going to continue to do it. I was pleased to see that President Trump's VA budget request for fiscal year 2026 laid out a brand of smarter, not bigger, and a strategy for OIT that takes direct aim at many of OIT's problems. According to this strategy, OIT will take advantage of past investments in automation and digital services to streamline and become a more cost-effective organization. They plan to change workflows and align similar functions across services to become more efficient. OIT will be making a substantial investment in cybersecurity monitoring and infrastructure readiness to ensure that their hardware and software can meet the demands of VA's growing operations. I look forward to hearing about these plans and more from our VA witnesses today. As technology changes and new problems arise, OIT needs to be flexible and adaptable in order to deliver the best outcome for our veterans. OIT's priorities should determine how the organization is structured, not the other way around. However, we can't talk about smarter IT strategy without talking about the money that VA has spent on IT projects that have not delivered as were expected. For years, this committee has highlighted the wasteful spending, the over-budget projects, poor outcomes that seem to come with all IT projects in VA, but really throughout government, as I've seen. OIT needs to be involved in the conversation from the very beginning before VA buys new IT systems, starts projects, or makes major investments. As I said before, nothing in VA functions without technology, so there must be real ownership and emphasis from the VA central office to involve the experts at OIT in technology decisions. Doing so might help avoid costly disasters down the road. Earlier this year, we held an oversight hearing on VA's software licensing management, where we dug into the reasons why VA struggles to track whether the software licenses that are purchased are actually being used. VA still does not know exactly how much money they're wasting on unused or duplicative software licenses. This committee has heard examples of software that VA purchased, tested, and then put on a shelf, never used after that. That's taxpayer money that is not being used to fix or modernize VA's IT systems because it was spent on IT that nobody will ever use. It's also not going to the benefit of a veteran or rapidly responding to an appeal or developing a claim in a more thoughtful or meaningful or efficient process. Major IT projects that support healthcare systems, education benefits, and financial management are ways are way over budget and have consistently fallen below expectations. These are just a few examples, and there are many more that we could point to. The people of Michigan's 7th Congressional District sent me to Congress to make VA smarter and work better for our nation's veterans, and I want to do my part to make sure that we follow on that commitment. As the chairman of this subcommittee, my job is to make sure that the billions of dollars that VA spends on IT is accounted for and produces real results. The strategy that OIT is taking seems to focus on being more careful with big projects, making sure they deliver results and spend money wisely, and are involved in IT decisions from the start. I look forward to discussing this strategy and more with our witnesses here today. Lastly, I'm looking forward to working with the President's nominee for VA CIO, Mr. Ryan Coate, after he is confirmed by my Senate colleagues, and we urge them to move quickly and swiftly in that direction. OIT has an important mission, and the work that OIT is doing today, as well as the work that Mr. Coate will do, has a direct and meaningful impact on veterans' lives. And with that, I want to yield to Ranking Member Buzinski for her opening statement. And again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding today's hearing. I'm glad VA's acting CIO is here to present to discuss the Office of Information and Technology's organizational structure and priorities. Everything VA does to provide veterans with world-class health care and benefits they have earned happens on computers. Information technology is foundational to the department. I'll say that again, I really truly believe that that is foundational to the services we provide to our veterans. I am extremely concerned that this foundation is at risk. OIT's fiscal year 2025 budget request was already what many deemed a quote-unquote maintenance budget, mostly due to Republican spending caps. This meant that many in the department's modernization efforts had to be throttled, and VA's already aging IT infrastructure continues to crumble. To make matters worse, the VA administration and Secretary Collins just informed Congress that they tried to illegally transfer $182 million from OIT to VHA and VBA to compensate for even more community care expansion and mandatory overtime for claims examiners. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the fiscal year 2026 budget request cuts OIT's budget by $500 million. In each of our hearings over the past 6 months, I've repeatedly highlighted the importance of OIT and the critical employees in this office. The budget and the planned reorganization of OIT makes it clear that Secretary Collins and the Trump administration do not share those same feelings. I expect to hear from my colleagues that they think Congress has long since over-budgeted and over-resourced this office without fixing any issues. I also expect to hear about how the Democrats are simply fine with quote-unquote the status quo. I could not disagree with that more. While there are many struggles in VA's technology modernization efforts, they are not going to be fixed by siphoning money and resources out of the office to fund VBA, overtime pay, or community care. This year's budget request indicates one thing, and it is not a decrease of bureaucracy. For years, we have seen a continuous dismantlement of capacity by expanding its portfolio of what it must take on without making equitable investments in resources and staff. More work with less resources is never a recipe for success. Further, I have strong issues with the written testimony VA submitted for this hearing. It's almost as if VA is bragging about the loss of trusted, hardworking, and knowledgeable federal employees, many of whom are veterans themselves, to the Voluntary Retirement Program, or VERA. Of those that participated in the DRP and VERA programs, VA notes 78% of these were retirement eligible, which reads to me that VA lost a significant amount of institutional knowledge and technical expertise. That is extremely troublesome, especially as the remaining VAs are poised to take on more and more work to compensate for contract cuts, staffing cuts, and accelerated deployments. The fatigue that is likely to cause creates major risks for system stability and cybersecurity. I'm also concerned about the office's reliance on quote-unquote natural attrition to reach whatever staffing goals that they have set for themselves or have been set for them. With natural attrition, you can control the size of the team, but it is much harder to control the composition. VA has already lost critical technical expertise, and if the department doesn't get this under control, it's going to lose even more. Ultimately, I'm concerned that if VA's IT foundation is allowed to continue crumbling, the department won't be there for generations of veterans. We cannot allow this to happen. I look forward to hearing from both the VA and GAO witnesses today on this reorganization and the potential intended and unintended impacts. I'll close by saying that I hope VA gets a Senate-confirmed CIO soon. I hope that whoever the administration chooses, they are competent and qualified to lead one of the largest information and technology programs in the country, if not the world. VA employees and veterans deserve nothing less. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Brzezinski. I'm now going to introduce our witnesses. From VA's Office of Information Technology, we have Mr. Eddie Poole, Acting Assistant Secretary for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer. Very long title, sir. Thank you for being here. Accompanying Mr. Poole is Mr. Jack Galvin, Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary and Deputy Chief Information Officer, also a lot to fit on a business card. Mr. Tim Pitts, Deputy Chief Information Officer for IT, Budget, and Finance, and Chief Financial Officer. Ms. Devin Beard, Acting Deputy Chief Information Officer for People, Science, and Chief People Officer. I think we used to call that Human Resources. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. And finally, we have Ms. Carol Harris, the Director of Information Technology and Cybersecurity at the Government Accountability Office. And I was telling my staff, Carol, that I think we're just going to have to get you an office in the Cannon building at this point, since you're here as frequently as you are, and we appreciate your willingness to come participate and give us your insight. So thank you all. I'll ask the witnesses to please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, and let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Poole, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement on behalf of VA.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Barrett, Ranking Member Brzezinski, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Office of Information and Technology. I am Eddie Poole, performing the delegable duties of the Assistant Secretary for OI&T and VA's Chief Information Officer. I'm honored to appear before you to provide an update on the status of OI&T and the critical work we are doing to deliver secure, modern, and veteran-centered IT solutions. I am accompanied by my OI&T colleagues, Dr. Timothy Pitts, Chief Financial Officer and Deputy CIO for IT, Budget, and Finance, Mr. Jack Galvin, Deputy CIO for End User Services and Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for OI&T, and Ms. Devin Beard, Acting Deputy CIO and Chief People Officer for the Office of People Science. Today, I will focus on 3 strategic imperatives: budget optimization, workforce reshaping, and cybersecurity dominance. First, the budget. We are executing a bold, mission-first approach so every dollar delivers maximum value to our nation's veterans. Over the past few months, we have conducted an exhaustive review of our budgets, resulting in the immediate reinvestment of $89 million into infrastructure readiness programs, with an additional $100 million poised for strategic reinvestment. We have intensified contract oversight and enforced accountability with acquisition partners without degrading service delivery, and in many instances, we have enhanced delivery of those services. We are consolidating VA's digital experience into a single modern platform with the goal of securely and seamlessly delivering the benefits and services to our nation's veterans. This platform now supports over 16 million monthly unique users, along with over 3 million veterans who have downloaded the VA mobile app. Our overarching goal is to bring VA to the veteran through this platform. Additionally, we are launching an initiative to consolidate VA contact centers to deliver an improved experience for veterans, whether they reach us by phone, chat, text, or other methods. To further optimize, we are requesting changes to appropriation language to eliminate rigid statutory subaccounts and authorize a 3-year availability for IT funds. This will empower VA to plan and execute with greater agility, align investments with outcomes, and minimize procurement risk and operational delays. Second, the workforce. We are reshaping OI&T's workforce to achieve veteran-facing outcomes with speed and precision. Through participation in OPM and VA deferred retirement programs and voluntary early retirement authorities, 78% of voluntary departures resulted in retirements. In our reshaping efforts, we are simplifying our organizational structure and reallocating and aligning positions to critical IT functions. This reorganization and reallocation of positions is designed to cut bureaucratic overhead, accelerate decision-making, and focus every OI&T position on delivering secure, reliable, and modern IT solutions to improve veterans' lives. And finally, cybersecurity. Cybersecurity threats are not static, and neither is our posture. We are pivoting from compliance-based checkboxes to dynamic, threat-informed defenses with proactive risk mitigation to stay ahead of evolving threats. This shift demands that FISMA and FISCAM audits accurately reflect the complexity and operational reality of VA's massive digital infrastructure. We are implementing zero trust architecture enterprise-wide, instilling a security-first mindset that includes rigorous identity verification, continuous monitoring, and strict access controls. Our success requires continued reinvestment in modern cybersecurity tools, skilled personnel, and rigorous standardized processes. The sensitive information we steward demands nothing less than unwavering vigilance and world-class cyber defenses. In conclusion, the changes we are implementing are focused on a single mission: delivering unparalleled, life-changing outcomes to America's veterans. We are not simply modernizing IT systems, we are building a future-ready VA where platforms are secure, teams are agile, and every taxpayer dollar generates maximum impact for the veterans we serve. And with that, I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Poole, and your written statement will be entered into the hearing record. And I assume the rest of your panel from VA is accounted for in your remarks as well. Thank you. We'll now go to Ms. Harris. You're recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement on behalf of GAO.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett and Ranking Member Budzinski. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about VA as you examine the department's planned efforts to reform within its Office of Information Technology. VA operates and maintains an IT infrastructure that is intended to provide the backbone necessary to meet the day-to-day operational needs of its medical centers, veteran-facing systems, benefits delivery systems, memorial services, and all other systems supporting the department's mission. It is also responsible for protecting veteran data against cybersecurity threats. We have reported on VA's challenges with managing a myriad of major IT acquisitions and operations, such as software licensing and cloud procurement over the years. VA's track record of delivering failed or troubled IT systems is in large part why we designated VA healthcare as a high-risk area for the federal government in 2015. We also added VA acquisition management to our high-risk list in 2019 due to challenges with managing its acquisition workforce and inadequate strategies and policies, among other things. Both areas remain high risk today. As requested, I'll highlight some key reform efforts of VA's FY26 IT budget request, and then our work on leading practices and selected questions for assessing agency reforms. VA has requested $7.3 billion to fund its IT systems in FY26, an almost $300 million overall decrease from the prior year. It has also requested funding to support roughly 7,000 full-time equivalent employees, which is an overall decrease of about 11.7% from the 2025 enacted levels. Additionally, the budget request proposed amounts also reflect reduced spending on duplicative legacy systems and pauses in procurement of new systems until VA can conduct a full review of them, resulting in about a $500 million reduction. Further, VA's request states that a reduction of 931 full-time equivalents is consistent with maturing technology delivery models and a shift toward automation and digital services. We have found that effective reform efforts require a combination of people, processes, technologies, and other critical success factors to achieve results. Our prior work describes 12 leading practices that federal agencies can use in agency reform efforts, including efforts to streamline and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. These 12 practices fall into 4 broad categories, such as the process for developing reforms and strategically managing the federal workforce. Our prior work also identifies key questions that can be used to assess the development and implementation of agency reforms. For example, what data and evidence has the agency used to develop and justify its proposed reforms? How has the agency ensured their continued delivery of services during reform implementation? To what extent has the agency conducted strategic workforce planning to determine whether it will have the needed resources and capacity, including the skills and competencies, in place for the proposed reforms? Consideration of these leading practices and relevant questions can benefit VA's development and implementation of its reform efforts. My hope is that VA will be able to satisfactorily answer these key questions for you today, and if not, be able to pivot to do the work necessary and adjust plans accordingly to be able to give you satisfactory responses in the near future. Because if these leading practices and relevant questions are effectively implemented, such efforts can result in success in overcoming VA's long history of ineffectively managing IT resources. On a final note, we have 26 open recommendations that relate to VA's IT operations and cybersecurity posture. They are foundational in nature, so I strongly urge the department to get those fully addressed quickly. Doing so will put them in a stronger position to succeed in many of their planned reform initiatives. That concludes my statement, and I look forward to addressing your questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Harris, and the written statement you provided will be entered into the hearing record. From here, we will proceed with questioning. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. And thank you all for participating in today's hearing. Mr. Poole, wanted to begin with your statements and has some questions for you. The FY 2026 budget document that OIT has laid out a smarter, not bigger IT strategy. Can you give me some examples of how OIT is not being as smart as they could be currently?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. To your comments that you made in your opening remarks, I believe it was the stuff that's never used. That's stuff that we are no longer doing. So our budget for 26 and beyond will be spent on things that, again, drive maximum value to the veteran community, and things that don't have a use or don't provide value or maximum value. Those will be repurposed and reinvested where, again, we're getting the biggest bang for our buck for the veterans of this country, as they deserve.
Thank you, I appreciate that. From there, can you tell me how you are reorganizing your workforce to deliver services more efficiently through the process improvement that you kind of touched on in your opening remarks?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for OIT's reorganization, we are focusing, again, not just our investment capital, but our human capital as well, making sure that our organization is aligned to effectively deliver the most significant outcomes that we can for the department. So where we have things that, again, are not driving significant value, we are looking, analyzing, and realigning those functions to, again, bring those outcomes that we're after. So essentially, we're simply making sure that every decision that we make, every dollar we spend, every realignment, repurpose, everything that we do, again, our North Stars that we're driving absolute maximum value for the department, and in turn, the greatest impact we can make on the veteran community.
Thank you. Would you agree with me that essentially IT and this technological improvement is done to alleviate the need for more manual, human-driven processes, that we can rely more on automated features or more technology-driven process improvement, thereby requiring us to have fewer manual processes in there, and as a result, fewer people involved in that chain of activity going on.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, absolutely. It is about automating where we can automate, working smarter, not harder. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's not the position of me or certainly of others, I assume, on this committee to completely automate anything to the point that we don't have human interaction in the process to bring about the best outcome necessary. But I think since the dawn of technology, we've used it to do things that alleviate the necessitation of manual, processes and labor along the way. The discussion around reduction in some of the IT staff, around 12%. I think Ms. Harris pinpointed it a little bit more at 11 point something, close to 12%. Can you give us some insight into what that would involve and who exactly would be impacted by that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. Yes, in terms of the overall staffing numbers today, we are at approximately 8,205 FTEs. As part of our organizational reshaping, a lot of those billets are being looked at, analyzed, and like I said, the goal is not to reduce necessarily any numbers, but it's to make sure that we're optimizing how we allocate those resources. I will turn it over to Ms. Devin Beard, who can speak a little bit more about the breakdown of the numbers for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. So yes, we are currently about a decrease of 100 employees from the start of January. And we did participate in the OPM VA and VERA program within the VA. Those were sprinkled across our organization, but we were able to sustain those without any impact to our veterans due to succession planning, cross-training, upskilling, reassignments, the tools that are in our toolkit to make sure that we every day have the resources that we need to meet our Met veterans.
Thank you. Can you briefly, I've only got about 15 seconds left, can you confirm that no position with actual IT application, like interfacing, coding, things of that sort, are being eliminated throughout any of this process?
Once again, we're going through the workforce reshaping activities. Those are all being focused on, are they delivering the largest value? So as long as they align with our guiding light, then absolutely we are retaining those so we can meet our mission.
Okay. I was told in some briefing ahead of this that it was mostly in support, not direct IT interfacing positions, but more in the supportive roles of that. Can you confirm that?
Yes, I can confirm a lot of the back office or administrative type support functions are absolutely being evaluated. As you mentioned in your opening, do the processes that we have today need to remain in the way that they are? Are there redundancies that have built up over time that we need to reevaluate and make sure that we can accomplish what's still needed, but do it in the most effective manner?
Thank you. Ranking Member Baczynski for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll actually try to pick up where you left off here. And my question is going to be for Mr. Poole, but I'll open it up to Ms. Beard as well if you have the answers to this. But so were you just saying that there are 100 people that have taken either the DRP or the VERA, you've accepted their resignations, 100 people within OIT? Is that what you said?
Let me hand it over to Ms. Beard, Ranking Member. It's actually not 100. It's actually somewhat north of that. So, Ms.
Okay.
Beard.
So our total participation in the programs is 1,172 as of today.
Okay, that took advantage of one of those too. Okay. And then when you were talking about, and I appreciate what you were saying, that these are folks that are providing support. I guess my concern is that support, though, does support the overall mission of OIT. So at what level or what point does that type of a level of vacancies then erode the overall mission of OIT? And I guess I'll direct this to you, Mr. Poole. If you could kind of further elaborate on when you were accepting these early retirements or resignations, how did you kind of consider that when they came to you? Does it in any way erode what you're trying to accomplish within OIT?
Yeah, thank you, Ranking Member Baczynski. Yes, to answer your question, This is largely an opportunity where we have looked at where duplicated functions exist within IT and where these administrative functions are being performed elsewhere. I'll use HR as an example, where in OINT we built our own IT function within the IT department. This is a shared service that we can get from the department level HR areas. So that in itself is a pretty significant opportunity where we are able to basically reinvest back into the mission-focused functions of IT to be as mission-facing, mission-purposed as we possibly can.
So I guess would it be possible to provide to this subcommittee kind of a list of, who participated in this reorganization and where these resignations or early retirements have come, just so we can kind of better understand? I appreciate the example you gave with HR, but obviously if it's well north of 1,000 people, just concerned about where all those are coming from.
Yes, Congresswoman, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask then, Ms. Harris, could you kind of elaborate a little bit on, what you've been able to observe as far as OIT's workforce planning and how they looked at this? I know they've done a significant amount of restructuring.
Yeah, so back in January of 2025, we actually issued a report evaluating VA's cyber workforce in particular, but I think those trends can probably be applied across OIT. What we found was OIT's strategic workforce plan was incomplete. They don't have an inventory of their current workforce skills and competencies. So in terms of with the restructuring, not even having a baseline of what it is that they have, it's going to be difficult to tell, okay, from there, what is it that you're going to project to and what you're going to need in the future. They also didn't comprehensively identify their current and future human capital needs, skills, and competencies. So those are essential things that you're going to need with any reform effort. Whatever your goals are and objectives are for a reform effort, you're going to need to make sure that the workforce matches that need. And so being able to have those processes in place and have a complete picture of what you currently have and what you need to have in the future to match your reform effort, that's essential. And right now, VA does not have that capability. We have open recommendations related to that.
Okay. Could I just, Mr. Poole, ask you to kind of respond to that? I would be curious kind of how you might have looked through your process in these different early retirements, et cetera, what processes were in place, and talk a little bit more about that and kind of trying to meet this metric, I think, the GAO is pointing out being important to the overall, again, the mission of OIT.
Yes, thank you for the question again, Congresswoman. We looked at every single one of the individuals that took advantage of these opportunities and assessed that from a leadership perspective to ensure that this would not create any operational gaps or introduce unnecessary risks to the department. And in going through that process, we made certain that in order to honor the requests, the voluntary requests that were being submitted, that again, we had mitigation strategies in place to ensure continuity of operations. And as I mentioned previously, it gave us the opportunity to actually bring efficiencies in some areas and optimize some of those processes and workflows to really, again, provide a better outcome for the department. So it was very, very rationalized and very, very closely analyzed as we went about that process.
I think I'm out of time, but I'll yield back for now.
Thank you. Ms. Scherflis McCormick for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Barrett, and thank you, Ranking Member Budinski, for convening today's hearing. As a former healthcare executive and former ranking member of this subcommittee, I understand that information technology is vital in delivering world-class healthcare and fulfilling our sacred promise to our veterans. I also know that significant organizational change can be disruptive, but often necessary. The way Doge and Mr. Vaught have approached these changes at OIT seem intentionally cruel. I've heard you are trying to right this ship and recognize the valuable contributions of VA employees while implementing the change. Mr. Poole, what other steps are you taking to repair employee morale?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. It's a good opportunity to talk about the bigger picture at VA. Obviously, change is very challenging. In this particular instance, change is very necessary. It's an opportunity under this administration to really improve the things at VA on a scale really not seen before. So as we go about that, we're doing very frequent communications. We have a lot of activities underway. We have surveying and taking a pulse of the organization. Again, just to check in and make sure the workforce is getting the information that they need, particularly through the DRP programs. We made certain that we had lots of frequent communications, lots of options, lots of questions and answers with the workforce, so that the employees could make the best decision for themselves and the families with given the opportunities presented.
And what are you doing to bolster retention efforts?
To bolster retention efforts, we are, again, making our mission focus back on the veteran. We are focusing exclusively on trying to optimize everything that we do to drive maximum value, and I think that in itself has been a uniter with the staff and a good focus for the organization to really, again, focus on our core mission. What can we do to improve services to veterans across the board through technology?
Do you have any mechanisms in place that can actually track feedback to make sure that you're getting the desired effect?
Yes, Congresswoman, we absolutely do. In fact, I will yield to Ms. Beard, who will talk a little bit more about those mechanisms.
Yes, thank you for the questions. During a time of change, it's so important to have strong communications with the staff and make sure that we're providing back the visibility and understanding and the why we are doing what we're doing. Since January especially, we've been doing a lot of town halls and other communications. We have over an 80% satisfaction rate with over 78% attendance, so good saturation along with strong satisfaction. In the development side, we also have released a career development portal for all categories along the NIST cybersecurity codes for employees that focuses on not only assessing their current skills and upskilling into the areas they want to do. So our focus around retention is not only to take care of them now, but also take care of what the VA is going to need and what they need to continue their growth here with OIT.
Thank you. My next question has to deal with the Chief Information Security Officer. Since there's been significant changes within the organization, how much involvement has the CISO had?
Thank you, Congresswoman. She has been involved, as has her executive team. I believe that organization has 4 executives in the department. What we've done is primarily focus on the operational aspects. And then again, with the CISO herself, that's going to be more focused on the policy side of things. Operationally, we're looking at those immediate concerns, but as we evolve and grow throughout this reshaping effort, this will be probably much more involvement on the policy side.
And how much control and execution control does she have?
Congressman, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, how much control, operational control over the execution does the CISO have, since that person is going to be held accountable? How much control do they have?
Congressman, I would say quite a bit of control. I mean, this is an environment where we welcome feedback from all areas of the organization, and where that is available to collect and inform our strategy, we certainly maximize the opportunity to collect that. So,
And why is the CISO not here today?
Congresswoman, I can't really speak to that. I know that operationally, most of the components for our reshaping are being aligned more towards the technical operations side of the organization. Again, moving security functions next to the operations they support. And most of that is under Mr. Jack Galvin to my left. And so I thought, given the organizational direction we're going, it would probably be better to have Mr. Galvin here to speak to some of those issues.
Since I only have a second left, I just want to say that I just do have some deep concerns that we'll be holding this person accountable, and they're not here to actually talk about the level of control they have and how they've been participating. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I will recognize myself for 5 minutes again. Mr. Galvin, I want to make sure we get your parking validated for your participation today, so I got to ask you a question. OIT has gone through reorganizations in the past. Can you tell me what's different about this current reorganization and what lessons learned we've had that we can apply to this process that we're in now?
Sure. Thanks for that question, Chair. I think the big game changer for this one is the singular focus that the administration has put on standardization and priority on veteran outcome. When you had your hearing on the software asset management, for instance, we're having conversations now that it's on the how, not the why. We're all in sync with what our priorities are. So saving, duplication, enabling functions for software, for instance, that, don't duplicate but solve the requirement at hand. I think that's the big game changer, I think, or change in this organizational change than, in the past. I've been through many of them. Each one is built upon each other. I'd like to say that, principles have staying powers. There's priorities that change, but principles of operation, especially in IT, have staying power. And, we still have the principle of cybersecurity, the protection of veteran data, the, performance, service performance, ensuring we're accountable for system reliability and accountability. I think to speak to some of the other conversation is there's an excitement building now to deliver, real outcomes, EHRM acceleration. I mean, we're chomping at the bit to show that, in your area in Michigan, we're ready to go. Our 4 sites in Michigan are already prepared in terms of their heavy lift IT infrastructure. We have a complete dashboard that shows every site across the VA in terms of their readiness status. In fact, all 13 sites in the next year, in FY26, are ready in those 4 key areas of devices, network infrastructure, wireless. All of that is done already. In fact, next year, we'll be working on FY27, thanks to Dr. Pitts here and keeping a steady flow of the infrastructure readiness program and the funding that we have for technical debt.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I understood some of what you said, so that was helpful. To me, it feels like in the past, some of what we were doing with technology was like layering on, stacking up. Instead of replacing systems with one another, we were kind of adding to and layering up and up and up. And next thing you know, we've got so many systems, there's not as many unique users using each one of them, but nobody wants to give up the legacy model of whatever they had that they were used to using, instead of kind of learning along the way and upgrading into what they were, more familiar with. I remember when, one of the legacy Windows versions finally stopped being supported, and people were struggling to, move up to whatever the next or newer generation of that was. Sometimes that's necessary, and I feel like with technology, we can't move at the pace of the slowest participant. We have to move at the pace that is necessary to move the organization along. And I think that having that in mind is important. I've heard the secretary speak a number of times at some of his observations, and how when he walked in the door on his first day, he couldn't even know how many people were in the department and where they were all assigned, because you had different payroll systems and different human resources management systems and all these other things that are not delivering care and benefits to veterans. They are simply the running the system itself. And they are kind of a drag, if you will, on the efficiency of the overall system if we have duplicative processes and more than one system in place doing the same thing, or this, part of the department over here is using this thing, but this department's using that. They do the same, or they have the same purpose, but they're now duplicative in nature, and then you've got to have IT resources designed to cover both of those, when instead you could have one that covers the total system. So I think that there's a lot there that can be done better. I hope that we all recognize that, especially when it relates to IT. Dr. Pitts, can you tell us, from your perspective, how important is it from a resource allocation perspective to have an efficiently organized workforce specifically around these IT projects, so that people kind of know their mission and they have the site focus that they need?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. When we talk about resources, people, and money, it's only as effective as we put against the actions that drive outcomes. So it is very important, to answer your question, that we have that aligned. Like we talked about in the beginning, it's not about bigger budgets, it's about smarter budgets. And so that's where that alignment occurs. Do you have the traceability from the dollars that were requested through the activities that they're invested in to ultimately what is produced for the veteran at the end of the day? It's about setting controls, working with IG to have a control environment to make sure that the plan is enacted as placed by the department.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I am out of time on this round of questions, so I will yield to Ranking Member Bazinski for 5 minutes.
Just like to say, I hear you when you say this is about smarter, not bigger. Part of today is not anybody's talking about bigger. We're talking about bigger cuts, the cuts that are actually happening and what that's going to mean for what the mission is for OIT. That is my concern. I do want to go back to this question about staffing and the lower levels of staffing through the DRP, the VERA, and then natural attrition. Mr. Poole, if I could ask you, OIT staffing looks now lower than what is budgeted for fiscal year 2026. Will OIT now need to rehire staff after essentially paying employees to leave?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the question. Yes, we will likely need to continue to hire folks just as we will in perpetuity. It's a cyclical thing. You've got people coming in, going out, different life cycles of the employment process. Many of the folks that left were, again, retirement eligible. As I mentioned before, 78% of those resulted in retirements. And so we will continue to recruit. We will bring in new folks to the workforce. And as we do that, we'll be focusing exclusively on mission. So whereas we might have hired across the board previously, we're going to be looking at prioritizing for the most, again, value-added opportunities and how we're driving the mission forward for the department as we recruit.
Yeah. So, and I can imagine you could hire new folks, but I mean, for those that have left, do you imagine having to rehire any of them because the vacancy itself is too critical, they left, we need to bring them back? Can you see that happening?
Congressman, no, I wouldn't see that happening. Again, as we went through this process, we put a lot of rigor behind how we approved folks that wanted to take advantage of these opportunities, and again, making sure that we didn't create any operational gaps. And so it would be highly unlikely that we would be hiring folks back as a contingency. Many of them are, again, available to the end of the year, but I don't anticipate that being a contingency we'd have to exercise.
And I should just say, some of my concern is coming from the fact that over the last 8 years, it seems like OIT staff, the OIT department has been saying we're way understaffed. And now we've seen a major attrition of employees over just this last 6 months. So I guess that's part of where my concern is, but the question I'd also have is, how are you then prioritizing? When you're talking about mission, and we want everything to be mission-driven, of course, but within that mission, you're going to have to make, probably with less staff, some really hard decisions on what is prioritized and what is not. Can you walk me through what that looks like?
Yes, certainly. It goes back to the opportunity here with standardization. Previously in the construct that you referred to, OIT would be positioned to support maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 or more similar type workflows, capabilities, or systems across the department for one set of capability. As the department standardized down to a real enterprise process on how we do business, that allows OIT to come in and really automate an enterprise solution around those functions. And so that in itself will be a tremendous efficiency driver for how we staff the organization. And then second, as I mentioned previously as well, we have a number of administrative functions that have grown into the organization. We have a lot of things that are not a pure IT-focused mission that are consuming resources within the department. And we're no different than the rest of the organization. We're going to get back to our core mission, which is delivering IT, and where we can get services and functions from other places in the department that are not IT related, we will be pursuing that.
Could you give me an example of what that would be?
Sure, I'll go back to the example of HR. We in IT over the previous administration decided to build our own HR function within the Office of Information Technology. That consumes 300 plus resources to do that. At the department level, we do have an HR department. We have several HR options within the organization. And so again, it doesn't make a lot of sense financially or otherwise to build that function in-house when we can leverage the department level resources for that.
And I appreciate what you're saying about standardization, because this comes up a lot, and when we've been talking about the EHRM, moving that forward, standardization seems to be really important, but I would just kind of point out my bigger concern here is without enough people power to help the VA actually and OIT standardize, that could set yourself up for failure if you don't have the people to do the standardization, because the VA is such a unique place and has a lot of challenges as it relates to standardization, so maybe easier said than done. So I'll yield back.
Thank you. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes again. Mr. Poole, wanted to circle back just for a moment on something the ranking member just asked you. You said there are 300, under the previous administration, there were 300 people in the HR part of the OIT, is that correct, doing HR functions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that was an estimate,
Yeah.
around 300. I believe Ms. Beard has the exact number if you want it, or we can take that for the record, but roughly 300 resources.
So
yes.
300 out of 8,200 were doing HR functions that could have been or would have otherwise been done by the department as a whole and absorbed into the workflow of the department, into the, I'm sure, robust HR portfolio of managing 400 and some odd thousand people within the department. Would you say that's fairly accurate?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I mean, again, that does put it in great perspective. You know, we have 8,200 folks roughly in OINT. Do we need a 300-plus person organization to do our own?
Yeah.
We're driving the business to standardize on common
Right.
technologies. We'll do the same.
Yeah. Ms. Beard, do you have anything further on that?
Yeah, I just do have the number. It's 242. We do have some additional upcoming attritions through the programs of impacting that, but do reinforce the focus about how we can, once again, make sure we still get the services we need for OINT to meet our veterans' needs, but also make sure that we have the capabilities to achieve that through the HR functions.
Sure. And is that roughly 300 or 242, or the number you gave me, is that included in the roughly 1,100 that you talked about in like deferred retirements, things of that sort?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's spread across the board.
Yeah.
It's really, you know, again, we did not exempt any positions as part of that from a OINT perspective for the DRP programs or VERA. And so that 1,100 consists of multiple different domains and areas within the organization.
Sure, but they also, those 300 people, I'm not minimizing or suggesting they don't have a legitimate, you know, work ethic or anything, but if that job can be done on an aggregated level, there's not a reduction in benefit for a veteran or a delayed in a claim or anything of that sort that would result from that job being done by a higher level department asset.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. You know, again, and it is
Those Chinese cyber attacks are affected by that. No, you know, no update to the mobile app that I use or veterans like me use throughout the management of our claim or interfacing with the VA. So, okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Poole, VA's budget documents describe a buy before build strategy. I think that's a good insight into some of the motivation for how we make this better. You know, do we have to design it from the ground up, or can we take something that is pre-existing and kind of, you know, modify it for our use within the department? Can you kind of give me some insight into how that works and what the motivation behind it was?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, and thank you for the question. It's a really good one in terms of how we are approaching optimizing the organization. So the buy versus build is really driven by the need to look at enterprise standard tools out there today that can deliver functionality for the department. Previously, we've invested in building and building and building. And so we have a very large portfolio of products that are custom. They're built and maintained, and we're perpetually stuck, and a lot of those get into the legacy portfolio. When you go out and buy capability from industry, you can generally get an enterprise platform that you can consolidate a standard workflow and process for the department on, and maintain and keep that system modernized. And again, it's just a much better model. With that comes increased cybersecurity, a lot of other, you know, efficiencies in terms of, you know, just how we maintain those products.
Sure, I appreciate that. I had worked previously in our state treasurer's office a number of years ago, and we were using legacy systems that were built from the ground up, and we were having a hard time finding servers that would actually run them any longer. These things were like 30 years old at the time. And that was just one hardship that we were encountering, whereas if you have a process or you have a product that is purchased off the market, it has the robust backbone necessary to kind of keep it functional and running, just, as one example, and necessitates less maintenance over time and people doing that, to be sure. I am almost out of time, so I'm going to yield to the ranking member for 5 minutes for her questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Poole, can you tell me why are millions of dollars being transferred out of OIT to plus up other parts of the department when there are nearly 20 unaddressed, unfunded priorities on the one-to-end list?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I can't really speak much about what's driving transfers. I can speak about what we're investing in OIT in. I'll turn it over to Dr. Pitts. Maybe he can provide some more insight for you on that.
There's two specific things that we need to address to your question. The first is that there is OIT, but we're driving the larger department and for the needs for veterans across the entire department. So at the end of the day, we may have a one-to-end list, but VA also has a one-to-end list. And sometimes the other administrations and staff offices may have a priority above IT. And that is a decision that sits with the secretary. The second aspect of that is you asked about the one-to-end list that exists within OIT. It's important to remember that when we submit that one-to-end list as part of our congressional justification, that is a point in time. And since that time when that is submitted, we almost immediately start funding into and against that list. So that list that you've seen, we've been able to start to drive down our one-to-end list. We look at this monthly with our end-of-month close, and where we are able to identify savings, we're able to reinvest in real time. So we don't wait for the end of the year to come and then pay down our one-to-end list. It's happening in real time. So again, with budgets, it's point in time, and good organizations aren't just planning for the future, they're moving in real time to create it.
So a follow-up question to that, because I did take time to look at the one-to-end list, and like the top 5, issues. One was cybersecurity and incident report. The second was data privacy and security. The third was governance, risk, and compliance. You go to 5th, it's threat and vulnerability management. These are all at the very top of the one-to-end list. And those sound very serious to me. So what you're saying is that those have been resolved?
So in the opening testimony from Mr. Poole, you've seen that when we were here last year about this time, we said that we are carrying some risk within our cybersecurity and IRP, and that we will fund against that to really buy down that risk.
So that's exactly my question, though.
And that's
Excuse
exactly-
me. So that's my question, though, is you've transferred money away. My understanding, though, is that if those millions of dollars, the fiscal year 2026 budget requests $434.2 million decrease from fiscal year 2025, that difference alone, from what we understand, would basically solve 70% of what's on that one-to-end list.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. I can also say that we have invested over $100 million in our IRP, and I just signed off documentation to put a major investment within our ZTA just in the last few days. So the funding is being redirected to these key priorities, and we're spending down against that risk.
Okay. Mr. Poole, your testimony highlights a reinvestment of nearly $200 million from contract cancellations. Can you provide the committee a full list of contracts canceled within OIT and where this money is being reinvested?
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, we can take that back for the record and provide a list as requested. I would like to just add on the last question. Just for clarity, our one-to-end list are a capturing of requirements, whether they be valid requirements or things that we'd like to do. These are outside of our base budget normally. These are things that we know are unfunded largely, that we will be able to fund as funding becomes available, for various reasons. This is how we prioritize those lists. So the ones that you mentioned on top, those are largely ones that you can normally assume will be funded. It's when you get further down the list, it's just a racking and stacking to make sure that we capture those requirements, and then we can invest in those as we're able to do throughout the fiscal year.
So just to clarify, so you're saying that with the $434 million that's being cut from OIT's budget in fiscal year 2026, you're still going to be able to resolve all of that on the one-to-end list?
Congresswoman, like I mentioned previously with the standardization approach to how we're approaching things, again, the reference to where we may have 20, 30 different similar capabilities in the environment today, consolidating down to one enterprise platform, again, the opportunity from a fiscal perspective is pretty substantial. So yes, I do believe with the funding that we have, we will be able to meet the majority of our needs.
Okay. I have a question about DOGE. Was DOGE or any of its representatives involved in the contracts that were canceled?
So we don't have DOGE employees at VA, and I do understand that there is, being sensitive to ongoing litigation that I'm aware is underway. We'll have to refer you to our Office of General Counsel for a follow-up on that.
Okay, I'm over time. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're going to move to closing statements. So I want to recognize you for your closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again to the witnesses for being here. I hope that both VA and OIT leadership have heard the concerns that I've raised today. I'm not one for maintaining the status quo nor throwing money at issues needlessly. I am not one for maintaining the status quo, and again, I do believe in mission-driven work, so I appreciated those comments. Improvements to VA's organizational structure, processes, and strategies and operational workload can and should occur. However, as the ranking member of the subcommittee on this jurisdiction, I believe that this change must happen methodically and must be driven by data. VA's IT foundation will not continue to support the department's mission otherwise. Unfortunately, I have not heard today anything that really reassures me here. VA's answers have not indicated that the reorganization, staffing, or budgetary decisions were reached using data or evidence-based strategic thinking. I'm concerned that this was rushed to be finalized before a new permanent CIO could be confirmed. I would hope that the department would delay implementing such drastic changes until a CIO can be appropriately named, vetted, and confirmed. Mr. Poole, I hope that we and your team can continue our dialogue here and ensure that OIT can find the right balance in terms of structure and staffing. The work your employees perform undergirds much of the work VA performs, and I want that talent to be recognized, appreciated, and cultivated. I hope you and whoever is confirmed as the next CIO share that same desire. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Bozinski, and thank you to our panelists for being here today. Appreciate your insight and testimony to helping us drive, good decision-making within this committee, so thank you. OIT, it stands hopefully without saying, but it has an important mission and many competing priorities, and we even saw some of that on display here today. But when everything becomes a priority, nothing then reaches the top of the list, right? And we have to do a job of determining within those priorities what stands out as our most necessary attention. I'm glad to see that under Secretary Collins' leadership, OIT is reevaluating where they are investing, how they are utilizing their workforce, and what they can do to be a more efficient organization. No organization, not even the federal government, has unlimited resources. During this hearing, we have discussed several important steps that OIT is taking as part of its smarter, not bigger strategy to become a more effective and efficient organization. Starting fewer large development projects that come with the risk of ballooning budgets and poor outcomes. Reevaluating the current organizational structure in order to make OIT a smarter and more resourceful organization. Investing in IT infrastructure, cybersecurity monitoring, and reducing technical debt to make VA more resilient and some of the things, Mr. Poole, that you pointed out about enterprise-wide, large-scale systems that can be delivered more efficiently and with greater cybersecurity are important to see and review. I look forward to working with the OIT witnesses here today, and once Mr. Code is confirmed, to accomplish these goals and more. As the chairman of this subcommittee, I will continue to ensure that OIT has the right priorities, the appropriate responsibilities, and is organized in a way that best supports the VA's mission. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, that's so ordered, and this hearing is adjourned.